You might think that I only play Pokemon games since nearly every video on my channel is about Pokemon, but there's actually quite a few other games that I enjoy a lot. As a kid, I loved games like Sonic the Hedgehog, Harvest Moon, and Spyro, and even today I still play games like Animal Crossing, Call of Duty, and Minecraft pretty regularly. I don't play every new big game on release, but one thing that I've noticed is that every game that I play today is something from my childhood in some way. It's rare that a new game comes along and gets me interested now that I'm older, and the only game to really do that in the last 5 years was YoKai Watch. I'm not a huge YoKai Watch fan per se. I have played all the main series games that were released in the United States, but don't know too much about the finer details about YoKai Watch and yokai lore. A lot of people like to compare YoKai Watch to Pokemon, and I gotta be honest, I really can't make that comparison since I don't even like Pokemon. Everyone thinks I'm this big Pokemon nerd since I know all these obscure facts about Pokemon and memorize a ton of random Pokemon's base stats, but I've never actually even played a Pokemon game before. You guys actually thought I liked Pokemon? All of those videos on my channel about Pokemon, I have no idea where those came from. I was just reading random stuff that I typed in Microsoft Word without having any idea as to what I was saying or what I was typing, and putting random pictures of these weird looking animals behind it and somehow got people to watch it. It was all just a prank, bro. Besides, why would anyone even bother playing a game with a dumb name like Pokemon when YoKai Watch exists? YoKai Watch games even have a better story than modern Pokemon games, and it's not like YoKai Watch games have these grand stories or anything like that. It's just that the stories of Pokemon games have been so bad lately. Aether Foundation? Did anybody honestly even care about that? Or Rose from Sword and Shield? Who even is that guy? I've never even heard of him until this very moment. But YoKai Watch, and that's a game I can get behind, especially the first game, which in my opinion is the best in the whole series. YoKai Watch 1 sets off in a suburban looking Japanese town, which of course had to get its name changed for Western audiences to be given the name Springdale, although the proper Japanese name of Sakura Motomaki sounds a lot cooler. Anyway, the story follows around a boy named Nate who finds the YoKai Watch. The watch lets Nate see and befriend yokai and do some other yokai related things, and after obtaining the watch he starts his journey to save the yokai world. If you don't know what yokai are, they're based off of Japanese mythical creatures. These creatures are responsible for a lot of things in the world, most notably changing how people feel when they're around a yokai. One yokai makes the people around him feel hungry, another yokai makes people around him feel forgetful, and you get the point. Typically, if something's going wrong or if something is going off, it's the fault of a yokai. The main yokai that helps you throughout the game is named Whisper, who you can't battle with unfortunately. He also has a British accent in the English games for some reason, but not in the Japanese version. I'm not really sure why that is. Like, his persona is supposed to be a butler, and I guess the stereotype is butlers are British. But the more I think about it, him having a British accent makes even less sense when you consider the fact he's from the yokai world and not the real world. Despite Whisper's inconsistencies, I think he's a great addition to the game. He pairs nicely with the YoKai Watch item to give you tips on how to play the game and show you where you have to go to progress in the story. While this might seem handholdy or that it makes the game too easy, which it can do at times, overall it's a nice addition to help stop you from getting lost, since there's a lot to explore in Springdale and the surrounding area, and without it I would have definitely gotten lost multiple times and probably would have dropped the game before completing it. The way you find and befriend other yokai varies, from some being essentially given to you throughout the story, while others you have to go out of your way to befriend. You can even go out of your way even more and find and befriend rarer yokai, but that gets a little more complicated. Each yokai prefers a different type of food with no real way to figure out what that food is in the game, and even if you do happen to have the specific food, the yokai isn't guaranteed to like you and can still run away. This really isn't too much of an issue since there are a lot of other yokai you can get easily, and if you're a more hardcore YoKai Watch fan, you probably would have no problem just looking up a guide to see how to befriend specific yokai. But I do wish that befriending yokai was a little bit easier and more straightforward as to which food they liked. This was apparently fixed in future games, but for now I really want to just focus on the first game. If you want to befriend stronger yokai though, you have to upgrade your watch from the watch shop. This guy also happens to be one of the very few other humans who seems to know anything else about YoKai Watch, and you can usually upgrade your watch by doing various tasks that he gives you, which is also needed to progress in the story and unlock certain areas. You can have up to 6 yokai on your team, which you can swap out pretty easily with your yokai medallion. Each yokai has a certain rank, ranging from S being the best all the way down to E being the worst, and they also have tribes. If you have multiple yokai on the same team of the same tribe that are next to each other, they'll get a bonus stat that represents that tribe. The tribes are usually representative of the yokai's appearance, with tribe names such as Brave, Eerie, and Slippery, which is a rather strange one. To be honest, I never really fully understood the tribe mechanic or how to properly take advantage of it, and I just used yokai on my team that I thought looked cool, and if I happened to have two of the same tribe, I would put them next to each other. As for the actual battle system in Yokai Watch, typical battles are 3-on-3 battles and are not turn-based. This can cause battles to be chaotic, and over time you can charge up what is called your Soultimate meter to do a special Soultimate attack. The Soultimates are usually how I won battles throughout the story mode, and in some boss battles you have to be crafty with how you attack and how you use your Soultimates. One thing I will say about this game and the battle mechanic that I didn't like was there was no online multiplayer for battles, which just seems really weird, and you would think it should be a staple feature for a game like this. Again, luckily this wasn't the case for future games where they did add in online battles, but it is really strange how the first game of the series didn't even let you go online. As for the boss battles though, I think that the boss battles are one of the best parts about this game. Some boss battles were actually pretty difficult to beat, and most had some sort of unique extra gimmick you had to pay attention to in order to defeat it properly. I remember having a ton of trouble with the spider boss on my first playthrough, having to face against it multiple times, but once I figured out its weakness, it got a lot easier. One of my favorite boss battles in the first game was the battle against Dr. Mataman. Dr. Mataman is an evil yokai that lives in the hospital who attempts to cut your heart out. This game is rated E for everyone, by the way, but it does have some messed up elements in it that make me wonder how it managed to get an E rating. My favorite insane story from the first game has to be the story about how Jibanyan became a yokai. Yokai lore in general is pretty weird, but in some cases, like with Jibanyan, the yokai were actually living things in the real world before becoming yokai. In the case of Jibanyan, which is a cat-like yokai that also happens to be the series mascot, Jibanyan was a regular old cat who belonged to a little girl named Amy, and Jibanyan really loved her. One day, Jibanyan got hit by a truck while out with Amy and died, turning him into a yokai. When you meet Jibanyan in the first game, he tries to fight trucks in the middle of the street, but keeps getting hit, but doesn't die because he's already dead. The trucks and surrounding people around him don't even see him at all because he is a yokai as well. You end up befriending Jibanyan, who becomes a big part of the story as well, and eventually Jibanyan finds Amy again, but this time she has a new cat and forgets all about Jibanyan. I don't know how you guys feel about this, but this is just one of the many examples of Yokai Watch being really dark and even sad for a kids game. Even the main villain of the first Yokai Watch game, McCracken, has a pretty dark story behind it. McCracken took over the yokai world after the previous leader died, and he plans on invading the human world to take over it too. This is the main part of the story where you are tasked to seal off all of the entrances between the yokai world and the real world, and in doing so that will send all the yokai that are currently in the real world back to the yokai world. Doing this would also result in Nate forgetting everything he knows about yokai and the Yokai Watch, but it has to be done in order to save both worlds. The story may be a little cliche, but for a kids game it actually gets pretty deep and randomly dark at times. Overall, the first Yokai Watch game is actually a really good game. I think it's one of the best games on the 3DS, to be honest, and it's one of the few games that I've actually played through more than once in recent years. If you have a 3DS and still can find the game somewhere cheap, I definitely recommend trying it out for yourself if you haven't. They did even remake the first game for the Switch in Japan, but there's still no sign that it will be coming to the West anytime soon. I'd totally be down to play it again on the Switch, since what I've seen from Japanese footage, the game actually looks pretty good on the Switch. Even the anime is pretty decent as well, although I've only seen a handful of episodes. It's unfortunate that Yokai Watch never really took off in the West like they had hoped, but at least it isn't completely dead. Just because it never took off doesn't mean it's bad, and I'm really excited to see what the future of Yokai Watch has for the West.